Many years ago, in Basotho Cultural Village, there lived a girl named Zola, who had always been different from other children her age. She grew up seeing her family celebrate Christmas at Grandma Nomsa's house every December, when the whole family returned like migrating birds, carrying bags, children, gossip, and expectations. As a child, Zola only knew that Christmas meant noise, food, and being told to greet everybody properly. However, as she grew older, she learned another rule, which was that Christmas was also the season when people measured your life and announced their findings without permission. Grandma Nomsa's house had seen many Christmases. It had watched engagements being announced proudly, weddings, pregnancies, and also divorces. Every year, Zola watched cousins come single and leave married. She watched some come married and leave separated. And she watched aunties clap for things they later prayed against. Unfortunately, by the time Zola turned 32, Christmas had stopped being just a celebration for her. It had become an inspection. That year, Christmas lunch was loud, crowded, hot, and full of smells fighting for space. The smell of roasted chicken mixed with rice, chakalaka, thick stew, and burnt meat from the broil outside. Smoke entered the house boldly as if it had rights. Pots argued on the stove, plates clashed, and children ran barefoot, screaming and chasing one another, slipping on spilled juice and laughing as if nothing in the world could touch them. Old aunties sat with plates balanced on their laps, chewing slowly and watching everybody like CCTV cameras that never blink. Their eyes missed nothing. They knew who gained weight, who lost weight, who came with a ring, who came without one, who looked tired, and who looked too happy. Zola arrived late as usual, not because she wanted attention, but because traffic from Johannesburg to Basotho was wicked that day. She stepped in wearing a simple dress, carrying fruit juice and a cake like a responsible adult. She greeted everybody politely, kneeling slightly and smiling even when her cheeks already hurt from smiling too much. Zola is here, oh, Auntie Tandy announced loudly, wiping her mouth with the back of her hand. She's still slim like a university girl. Zola smiled. Well, slim was not a compliment in this family. It was a warning. She went straight to the kitchen to help serve food because that was her safest hiding place. The kitchen was her shield. When you are busy serving, nobody asks you questions, or so she thought. As she bent over to scoop rice, she noticed eyes following her. Auntie Lindowe whispered something to Auntie Nomasonto. Auntie Beauty clicked her tongue and someone laughed for no reason. Zola felt it in her spirit. This was not going to be an ordinary Christmas, so. By the time Zola had served almost everybody, her plate was still empty, but she did not mind. Peace first, food could come later. She was just about to sneak outside when she heard a voice. Zola, come and sit here. That voice belonged to Auntie Tandy, the chief coordinator of nonsense. Zola froze for half a second and pretended not to hear. Zola! Auntie Tandy called again, louder this time. We are not calling you to beat you now. Just come. Everybody suddenly became quiet. Even the children paused playing. Chairs scrubbed the floor and space opened in the middle of the sitting room like a courtroom. Zola walked slowly and sat down, placing her hands neatly on her lap like someone waiting for judgment. Auntie Tandy cleared her throat and began sweetly. So, Zola, how old are you now? Zola answered calmly. 32, Auntie. Ish! Auntie Beauty exclaimed, dropping her fork dramatically. 32 already? Auntie Lindowe shook her head. Time really flies when someone is enjoying life. Zola forced a small laughter. Ha! So enjoying life was now a crime, abi? Auntie Nomasonto leaned forward. So no one is serious at all? Zola smiled again. I have dated before, Auntie. Dated, Auntie Tandy repeated slowly. Dated where? Dating does not put ring on the finger. Someone laughed while someone else nodded deeply like a village elder. Auntie Beauty added, a woman must be careful not to waste her good years. Men don't wait. Zola opened her mouth to speak, but Auntie Lindiwe was already warming up. You see your cousin Ayanda, she said proudly. She got married at 24. Now she has 2 children. Zola nodded. Everybody knew Ayanda cried every night in her marriage, but that information was not allowed in this meeting. Auntie Tandy folded her arms and continued. Zola, be honest with us. Are you too picky or something is wrong spiritually? The word spiritually entered the room like a bad smell. Zola blinked. Nothing is wrong spiritually, Auntie. Auntie Beauty clicked her tongue. They all say that. Another auntie joined from the corner. Maybe she's too educated. Men don't like women who know too much. Or too independent, Auntie Tandy added quickly. Men want to feel like men. Zola laughed nervously. So I should pretend to be confused? Nobody laughed back. Auntie Lindiwe waved her hand. We are not attacking you. We are only concerned. Oh wow, concern had never sounded so aggressive before. Auntie Tandy lowered her voice as if she was about to share a secret. We cannot allow you to leave this house single again this Christmas. That sentence landed heavily on Zola. She looked around. Faces stared back at her. Some were curious, some were judgmental, and some were enjoying the show. Meanwhile, her mother sat quietly by the corner with her eyes fixed to the floor, twisting the edge of her wrapper. Auntie Beauty nodded seriously. Next year, people will start asking questions. Zola smiled sweetly. They already ask. Unfortunately, the aunties did not hear sarcasm. They heard a problem. Auntie Tandy leaned closer. Don't worry, we'll help you. Help? Zola felt cold. As she stood up later to finally eat, she overheard Auntie Tandy whisper to another auntie near the window. We must act fast. A woman can't be single forever. By New Year, we must fix something. Zola paused with her plate in her hand. Fix? She looked at the food and suddenly she was not hungry anymore. Alas, Christmas had only just begun. Zola woke up on Boxing Day to the sound of spoons hitting pots and voices already arguing before 7 in the morning. Christmas food was still warming on the stove, but something heavier than meat stew filled the house. It was the kind of air that tells you people have been talking about you while you were asleep. She brushed her teeth slowly, staring at herself in the mirror and reminding herself that she was not a criminal. She was not cursed, neither was she incomplete. She was just unmarried. Only unmarried. Well, in this house, that was already a full diagnosis. When she stepped into the sitting room, she knew peace had officially resigned. The aunties were seated in a half circle like church elders during Discipline Sunday. Their wrappers were tied tight. Their faces were so serious and cups of tea were in their hands. Not one person held a phone, which means this was important business. Auntie Tandy cleared her throat again. She loved that move. It made her feel like a judge. Zola, come and sit, she said, tapping the empty chair in front of them. Zola sat slowly and carefully, like someone entering a police station voluntarily. Auntie Lindiwe smiled first, but that smile was dangerous. My daughter, did you sleep well? Yes, Auntie, Zola replied. That is good, Auntie Lindiwe said, because today we need your attention. Zola nodded. Attention had already been collected yesterday anyway. Auntie Nomasonto leaned forward and began. We prayed about you last night. Zola blinked. All of you? Yes, Auntie Beauty answered, as women. Zola wanted to ask which god was invited to the meeting, but she swallowed the words. Auntie Tandy spoke again. Zola, we love you. That is why we cannot keep quiet. When a woman stays too long without marriage, it is either choice or blockage. Blockage, Zola repeated. Auntie Beauty nodded. Spiritual blockage, sometimes physical. Zola smiled. Physical like traffic? Nobody laughed. Auntie Lindiwe frowned. Don't joke with serious matters. Auntie Tandy continued. Some women don't know when their character is chasing men away. Zola tilted her head. Which character, Auntie? Auntie Beauty raised her finger. Talking too much. Auntie Nomasonto added. Being too confident. Being too exposed, someone else muttered. Zola looked around. So confidence is now a problem. Auntie Tandy sighed loudly. You see? That stone. Men don't like that stone. Zola nodded slowly. Noted. Auntie Lindiwe clapped her hands once. Let's be honest. Men don't want competition. They want peace. Zola smiled and said, I also want peace. That is different, Auntie Beauty quickly said. Men want peace that listens. Zola pressed her lips together. Auntie Tandy leaned back and waved her hand. Anyway, we have discussed and agreed. Zola's stomach tightened. Agreed on what? Auntie Nomasonto proudly answered. We formed a small committee. Zola almost laughed. Almost. A committee for what exactly? She asked. To help you, Auntie Tandy replied. Marriage is not something you leave to chance. Auntie Lindiwe nodded deeply. We will handle the spiritual side too. Auntie Beauty nodded. We will also handle introductions. Zola frowned. Introductions to who? Auntie Tandy waved her hand casually. Men, serious men. Zola shifted on her chair. Did I ask for this? The room went silent. Then Auntie Beauty shook her head. This generation always asking too many questions. Auntie Lindiwe leaned closer. Zola, do you want to die alone? That one landed. Zola inhaled slowly and said, I don't plan to die at all, Auntie. Auntie Tandy frowned. Sarcasm again. Zola smiled politely. I am just answering. Auntie Nomasonto shook her head. A woman must humble herself before time humbles her. Zola looked at her. Does marriage humble everyone? There was silence again before Auntie Beauty cleared her throat and said, Look, let us not argue. We already contacted a prophet. Zola's eyes widened. Contacted? Yes, Auntie Tandy said proudly. Very powerful one. He can see destiny husbands. Zola laughed before she could stop herself. From which markets? Nobody laughed. Auntie Lindiwe frowned deeply. Mockery delays destiny. Zola raised her hand slightly. I am not mocking. I am just surprised. Auntie Tandy leaned forward again. You think we want to embarrass you? People already talk. Zola nodded. People will always talk. Auntie Beauty snapped. They will talk worse when you reach 35. That number hovered in the air like a threat. Zola glanced at her mother, who was still quiet and still twisting her wrapper. Auntie Tandy noticed the look and jumped in. You see, your mother is worried. She doesn't want shame. Zola's chest tightened. So, I am shamed now? No, Auntie Lindiwe quickly said. You are a potential shame. Zola laughed. This time, she did not even try to stop the laughter. Potential shame. That is new. Auntie Tandy stood up. Enough talking. Action must follow prayer. Zola looked up. What action? Auntie Beauty smiled wide. Tonight we start. Zola felt something crawl up her spine. Start what exactly? She asked. Auntie Tandy answered calmly, almost sweetly. We'll start matchmaking. Zola's smile disappeared. From the kitchen, someone called that food was ready and the meeting ended just like that. Chairs moved. Plates came out and laughter returned suddenly, fake and loud. But Zola did not eat much. As she chewed slowly, she heard Auntie Tandy whisper to Auntie Lindiwe near the sink. This one is stubborn, but don't worry, we'll soften her. Auntie Lindiwe replied, if she refuses, we'll scare her small. Zola swallowed hard. What is all this now? She had not come home for Christmas to fight demons. She only came to rest. Instead, she had become a project, and the committee members were seriously working overtime without pay. By evening, the house had changed mood. Zola noticed how people suddenly kept adjusting their chairs, making space where no space was needed. It felt like a stage was being set. She sat quietly at the corner with her phone, pretending to scroll, hoping invisibility still worked in adulthood. But it did not. Auntie Tandy clapped her hands sharply. People should stop sitting anyhow now. Let us arrange ourselves properly. That sentence meant trouble. Chairs moved. Zola's chair was dragged closer to the center. She did not even resist. After all, resistance had failed since morning. Then the door opened. A man walked in with the confidence that did not belong to him. He wore a slightly oversized shirt, trousers that had seen better days, and a smile that looked practiced in the mirror. He greeted loudly, shaking hands too firmly and laughing before jokes even landed. "This is Brother Mandla," Auntie Tandy announced proudly, as if she had caught a rare fish. Brother Mandla nodded, adjusting his collar. "Praise God, family." "Amen," the aunties chorused. Zola looked up slowly. That was the man? Oh wow. Auntie Beauty pushed her gently. "Zola, greet him now." Zola stood and said, "Hello." Mandla smiled widely. "Ah, so you are the Zola." Zola sat back down. She already disliked how he said her name. Auntie Lindiwe laughed loudly. "Sit together. You people should talk." They pushed Mandla's chair beside Zola's, too close such that their knees were almost touching. Zola shifted slightly, but Mandla did not. "So Zola," Mandla began, lowering his voice as if they were alone. "What do you do?" "I work in marketing," she replied. Mandla nodded slowly. Office work. That is fine as long as it doesn't disturb family." Zola raised an eyebrow. "Family?" "Yes," he said confidently. "A woman's first duty." Auntie Tandy nodded proudly. "Ha, he has sense." Zola smiled thinly. Mandla continued. "I like humble women, soft women, women who listen." Zola nodded. "Good for you." Mandla laughed. "You are funny. But jokes aside, marriage is serious." Zola agreed. "That is why it should not be rushed." The aunties exchanged glances. Mandla leaned back and said, "A woman should not be too independent. Men don't like competition." Zola looked at him and said, "Life is not a competition." Mandla smiled awkwardly. "You know what I mean." Auntie Beauty jumped in quickly. "Manda is very prayerful. He doesn't drink." Mandla nodded. "Yes, although I used to, but God removed it." Zola asked, "Removed it how?" Mandla paused and said, "Spiritually." Zola nodded. Spiritually was doing heavy lifting in this house. Mandla leaned closer again. "My mother values respect a lot." Zola replied, "Respect is important everywhere." Mandla smiled. "Yes, especially submission." The word sat between them like a bad smell. Auntie Tandy clapped again. "Zola, ask him questions." Zola smiled politely. "Okay, Mandla, what do you do for a living?" Mandla cleared his throat and said, "I serve in church." Auntie Lindiwe added quickly, "He is very committed." Zola nodded. "Church is not a salary." Silence fell all over. Then Mandla laughed nervously. "God provides." Zola smiled. "True work." Auntie Beauty coughed loudly. "Zola, be gentle now." Mandla shifted. "I am currently trusting God." Zola nodded. "We are all trusting God." Auntie Tandy frowned. "Zola." Mandla regained his confidence and said, "Marriage is about building together." Zola agreed. "Yes, between two people with blocks." Mandla laughed. "You have strong opinions." Zola smiled. "I have thoughts." Auntie Lindiwe sighed loudly. "Ha, this girl." Mandla looked around and said, "I don't like women who argue." Zola replied calmly, "I don't like men who confuse conversation with arguments." Someone gasped. Auntie Beauty quickly stood up and said, "Let us bring drinks." But the tension stayed. Mandla tried again. "So, are you ready for marriage?" Zola looked at him. "With the right person." Mandla nodded slowly. "A woman must adjust." Zola nodded back. "A man too should adjust." Mandla laughed nervously. "You are different." Zola smiled. "I know." Auntie Tande clapped again harder this time. Enough talking. Chemistry is there. Zola blinked. Where? Auntie Lindewe smiled tightly. We can feel it. The two of you fit each other perfectly. Zola leaned back. Please don't. Mandla stood up proudly and said, I will come again tomorrow. Zola looked up and said, please don't. The aunties laughed as if it was a joke. Mandla whispered to Zola as he left, don't worry, my mother will train you. Zola froze. When the door closed, the aunties turned to her. You see, Auntie Tande said happily, God has answered. Zola stood up slowly. If that is God's answer, I have more questions. Auntie Beauty frowned. Don't be stubborn, this girl. Zola looked around the room and muttered, if marriage looks like prison, I choose freedom, please. Later that night, as Zola lay on her mattress staring at the ceiling, she heard Auntie Tande whisper outside, this one needs pressure. Auntie Lindewe replied, tomorrow we will increase it. Zola closed her eyes in exhaustion. She knew this has officially turned into warfare. By the third day after Christmas, Zola understood one thing clearly. The aunties were no longer advising, they were executing a plan. That morning, she woke up to silence. Well, not the peaceful kind, but the suspicious kind. There was no sound of shouting children, no loud radio, and no clanging pots. It felt like the house was holding its breath. She stepped out of her room and met Auntie Tande sitting alone in the sitting room, dressed as if she was going to church, even though it was not Sunday. Her hair was neatly wrapped, her Bible was open, and her face was calm. Sit, Auntie Tande said gently. Zola sat. We need to talk like adults, Auntie Tande continued. Yesterday you embarrassed us. Zola blinked. By answering questions, Auntie Tande replied, you challenged a man in front of elders. That is not how marriage works. Zola nodded slowly. Marriage also does not work with fear. Auntie Tande ignored her and said, Mandla is coming later today. Zola stiffened. I already said I'm not interested now. Auntie Tande smiled gently. Interest grows with time. Zola looked at her and said, pressure kills interest. Auntie Tande's smile faded slightly. You think you know better than women who have been married for years? Zola did not answer. Respect was the only thing holding her mouth. Later that afternoon, Mandla returned, this time uninvited and too comfortable. He walked in like someone who had been promised something. He greeted everyone loudly and sat beside Zola without asking. You look serious, he said. I am, Zola replied. Mandla laughed. That seriousness is what needs softening. Zola stood up and said, excuse me, but Auntie Beauty blocked her path. Sit small, let him finish. Zola sat back down reluctantly. Mandla leaned closer. You know, strong women usually end up alone. Zola met his eyes and said, weak men fear strong women. Mandla smiled thinly. Be careful. Now, that did not sound friendly. Later in the kitchen, Zola overheard voices. She paused near the doorway and heard Auntie Lindewe speaking in a low voice. This one thinks too much. If she gets married, she will calm down. Auntie Beauty replied, marriage humbles women. Auntie Tande added, even if it doesn't work, at least she won't be our problem anymore. Zola's chest tightened. She stepped back quietly. That evening, Mandla cornered her near the back of the house where nobody could see clearly. You are difficult, he said, but I like challenges. Zola looked around and said, I am not a challenge, I am a person. Mandla laughed. Once you marry me, you won't talk like this. Zola's stomach dropped. She returned inside shaking. Later that night, she received a message on her phone. It was from an unknown number. The message read, you should listen to your elders. Pride ruins women. Her hands trembled as she read it. Minutes later, another message came that read, a woman without marriage has no cover. Zola sat on her bed furious. She did not need to ask who sent it. The next morning, her mother finally spoke to her about the issue. Zola, sometimes you have to compromise. Zola was taken aback. On safety, her mother's eyes were filled with tears. I don't want you to remain alone. Zola held her hand gently, but I don't want to be trapped either. That afternoon, Zola overheard something that changed everything. Mandla was on the phone outside pacing. "Yes, Mama," he said. "They are pushing her. She will agree." Zola froze. Mandla continued. "No, she doesn't know about the other engagements. Those women were stubborn." Zola's heart dropped. "Once we marry, she will adjust," he added casually. Zola stepped back slowly and quietly, like someone leaving a dangerous room. That night, she folded her clothes and packed her bags. As she zipped her bag, she heard Auntie Tandy in her room laughing and confidently saying, "By New Year, this one will be married." Zola paused and smiled genuinely for the first time since she arrived, because they still believed their pressure would break her, unknown to them that their script was about to be flipped. Zola left the house early that morning before anybody came out, but as she stepped out, she saw her mother. Her mother followed her to the gate. "You are angry," she said. Zola shook her head. "No, Mama, I am just awake." Her mother wanted to say more, but words failed her. She hugged Zola tightly, after which she opened the gate and left. However, by morning, the house started vibrating with confusion. Mandla arrived as usual, confident, smiling and greeting people like a man who owned a future already booked for him. When he did not find Zola, he asked, "Where is she?" Auntie Tandy frowned. She went out. Mandla's smile stiffened. "Out where?" Auntie Beauty shrugged. "Maybe she's coming down." Mandla laughed, but it came out first. "Okay, she'll come back." Well, she did not, but something else came, an unexpected call. The next morning, Auntie Lindewe received a phone call. It was from her church friend in another township. "Is your Zola the one almost engaged to Mandla Mize?" Auntie Lindewe smiled proudly. "Yes." The voice on the phone paused and then she said, "Eish, you people don't know." "Know what?" Auntie Lindewe asked. Silence followed, then laughter, dry laughter. The woman said, "That man, he has 2 broken engagements. One woman ran away after he brought her home. The other one left when his mother demanded her salary every month." The line went dead. Auntie Lindewe sat down slowly in shock. However, by noon, another call came, this time to Auntie Beauty. "Tell your sister to warn her daughter," the caller said. "Mandla got a woman pregnant last year, but the church settled it quietly." Auntie Beauty dropped her phone. By evening, the house was quiet in a shameful way. Mandla came back that night, angry this time. "Why are people calling me?" he asked sharply. Auntie Tandy folded her arms and asked, "What people?" Mandla hesitated. "Church people." Now that hesitation spoke louder than any confession. Auntie Tandy's voice rose. "So these things they are saying are true?" Mandla laughed nervously. "People lie now, you know." "Did you get a woman pregnant or not?" Auntie Beauty asked bluntly. Mandla looked around, searching for support, but nobody answered him. Auntie Tandy's face hardened. "You said women left you because they were stubborn." Mandla nodded hard. "Yes, now, they did not understand submission." Auntie Lindewe laughed bitterly. "Or survival." Mandla stood up. "This is not how elders behave, oh." Auntie Tandy pointed at the door. "And this is not how decent men behave. Get out." Mandla left that night disappointed. 2 days later, the news spread properly in full sentences. Mandla had moved in with another woman. She was younger, desperate, and already pregnant. The same church people now prayed loudly for restoration in his life. Just like that, the aunties stopped talking about marriage. They found new topics on fuel price, the weather, and children misbehaving. Zola returned a week later, briefly to pick up some things, and the same aunties avoided eye contact with her. Auntie Beauty suddenly remembered that she put rice on the stove. Auntie Lindewe pretended to be on a call, while Auntie Tandy cleared her throat and mumbled, "We were only trying to help." Zola smiled. "I know, but you should have listened small now," Auntie Tandy added weakly. Zola looked at her. "I listened enough to save my life." Nobody said anything more. Later that night, Zola sat with her mother outside watching the sky quietly. After a moment, her mother said, "I am sorry." Zola held her hand and smiled. "I forgive you." Her mother sighed. "Marriage pressure makes women forget danger." Zola nodded, and silence almost makes daughters disappear. Weeks later, Zola returned to Johannesburg fully to continue her life. She slept peacefully and laughed again without fear. Meanwhile, Mandla's marriage collapsed before it even began. The woman left with the baby after seeing his true colors. Then, his mother blamed witches for his misfortune, while the church blamed the devil, and our dear Mandla blamed women. As for the aunties, they never mentioned his name again. By the next Christmas, Zola arrived confident, glowing, and still very much single. As expected, this time around, no committee was formed, no chair was moved, and no throat was cleared. When one small cousin innocently asked her, "Auntie Zola, are you married now?" Zola smiled and said, "Not yet." The aunties held their breath. Then Zola added, "But I am alive, safe and happy." Thank you for watching the story. Kindly share your thoughts about the story with me in the comment section. Give the story a thumbs up and share the story out with your loved ones. Subscribe to this channel if you've not done so by now. Until I bring another story your way. Bye!